Welcome to another episode of Connect the Dots. I am your host, Sarita Johnson. I like to bring you stories that will encourage, uplift, and empower you to stand firm on the promises of God and watch Him in your life. Connect the Dots.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. This has been a year full of dots being connected. As we are coming to a close of season 1 of Connect the Dots, I am so excited to share our next guest, Alicia, with you. She and I met through some friends that we share, and she has a redemption story that just only God can construct. And I am so thankful for the opportunity to share her story and her knowledge with you. So I'm going to go ahead and circle into our conversation.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name's Alicia Tappan. I am currently 37 this year, which is the oldest I've ever been. It's really exciting to make it this far. I have a husband of 8 years as of tomorrow and 2 boys, one who's 7 and one who's 5. So I definitely have my hands full at home. We recently just had a litter of 11 puppies.
I saw that.
11 little puppies running around. They're labs and they're so cute, but we actually got each of them rehomed into a family that I actually know. I didn't know I had 9 friends, 10 friends who needed puppies. So we kept one, which is exciting, but I'm really excited to have like a quieter house again. I live here in Northwest Florida, but I'm originally from Michigan and I moved down in 2004. Went to college at the University of West Florida in Pensacola, traveled the world for a little bit. I lived in Australia and Fiji, Hawaii, and Denver before coming back to the Northwest Florida area because I think these are the most beautiful beaches. Like people don't really understand how great we have it here.
Yeah.
I love the color purple. My favorite food is popcorn.
I'm already feeling this kinder spirit already. Yeah. Purple is my favorite color. Popcorn is my favorite.
Yeah, me too.
Always got popcorn on hand. Always. Well, that's so awesome to hear. So Midwest Michigan, it's funny. I'm meeting a lot of people who live in Pensacola that are from Michigan, Ohio, in that area somewhere. Fun story. My daughter, is married and today is actually their anniversary. So I'm actually on grandparent duty. So then they could get away for a little bit for their anniversaries.
Well, congratulations to you for raising a family with her. We need grandmas and grandpas in the kids' lives for sure. Unfortunately, this generation is sort of raising their grandkids, but we know that wraparound support, even my own family, my husband's parents, we make it special time with them so that they know not just mom and dad, but you've got people who care about you all over the place.
It definitely takes a village. I know raising my girls, I needed aunties, uncles, everybody, and everybody was there to help. It just makes it like the natural thing to be able to do. I actually came down to spend the summer with them to kind of help them out with the girls. So then they didn't have to worry about childcare for the summer, and it's been a real treat. The end of the day, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, I'm so exhausted. I was like, I forgot what this feels like.
The 2 kids on my own and then having all the dogs, I was like, holy moly, I can't imagine having more kids. I always wanted 4 or 5 kids, but I think I'm good with the 2. I've got lots of what I call spiritual daughters with the line of work that I do. So I get to be mom to teenage girls, even though, I don't have any biologically. So I got my fill.
Tell us a little bit about your faith journey. So were you raised a Christian home, or did you come to the Lord later in life?
My background with Christianity has been a wild and crazy ride. I was blessed as a child to have my 2 parents at home, but one identified as Methodist, the other one identified as Baptist. And so they couldn't agree on church, so we didn't go.
Okay.
So I did not. I had the one aunt who was religious about every Sunday, going to church. And so a few times I would go with them, but they identified Presbyterian. So that was not even in the same wheelhouse of my family. I started to identify more as agnostic and then eventually atheist. I was such a science-driven, fact-driven person without having a real relationship with God in my family household. I can tell you the prayer that we had on our wall, it wasn't anything my parents talked about on a regular basis. And so when I hit that puberty stage and you're already questioning all authority, I asked my mom, I sat down and I was like, prove it. God's real, prove it. Show me what he can actually do or whatever. And my mom, even though she was a believer, she didn't have the language to support that. She was just kind of like, you just have to believe it. But I also was told if you didn't believe in Santa Claus, that you wouldn't get anything for Christmas. So, you know what I mean? So it was like this paganism relationship. It was really convoluted. So atheism and Wiccan was actually where I'm more identified. I understood nature and I understood the science behind nature. And I really identified with these spiritual gifts, but I didn't know how to use them for good. I was actually the girl who knew all the haunted house stories. We had like a spirit in our house. Like, I'm sure of it. We found out there was a little boy who hung himself in the closet of my bedroom.
Oh, wow.
And we would hear the noises in our house. It was even creepier, but because there was like this hole in our roof, we would have bats like on a regular basis in my room.
Oh, wow.
I was sort of enchanted and terrified by like the dark world. When I became like 15 or 16, somebody invited me to Young Life for kids. And I was drawn to it. Like in this weird way, I wanted not to fit in, but to see what this whole Jesus thing's all about. I went to what they called, Young Life Camp, was able to see just like the joy that all these kids had doing this stuff together. I heard worship music for like the first time. And I decided that the only way to prove that God was real was to give my life to Jesus and see what happened. I like threatened God. If you're real, make me this Christian. Nothing happened. I went, I did the prayer, I'm going to give my life to you in the bathroom by myself, and nothing happened. I don't know. I guess it was like melancholy. I was like, all right, fine. Like, this is just as, it's not anything, but I'll be this believer for you. But I don't know what going to church means. And I definitely don't think I'm going to do the whole like get down on my knees thing. I was actually more angry that I would have to do that than I believed that he was going to be sovereign and helpful in my life. So I had a lot of like legalistic issues, and I had a lot of ritualistic issues because I was like, if you're really this God who saves and loves all people, then why do you have to have these different regimens? Plus, it didn't help that my cousins went to like a private school and they had to wear uniforms. And meanwhile, I'm out here in a public school wearing whatever I want, getting the same education. I was actually a leader in my school, right? I was National Honor Society president, student council president. I did a lot of big things for my school, hosted fundraisers and pep rallies. And I loved being a leader. I think God saw all of that in me in a way that I didn't see it in myself. I didn't know how to use it for what his purposes were. I want to tell you the rest of my story because I think you're going to see where God shows up. I'm like, interrupt me if you got questions, but I'm going to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love talking about God now. I can't believe I was so dumb, but I just didn't know. And I love to share with, the girls that we work with at the Secret Place, my story of God. I wasn't paying attention, just like you're not, but he's there and he's constantly covering you in different ways that you need to be covered in. When I do this whole Young Life thing, I do the prayer, right? Nothing happened. And I thought it was going to be magic. But what did happen was I was being protected because I did not know what was going to happen next. And what it ended up being was the same kids who invite me to Young Life are actually part of a human trafficking ring. We had no idea. There was a coach at my school who was posing as a coach. He was really a predator. And he had created these rings of sex trafficking. And what I mean by that was he had created a relationship with teachers and other faculty at school and said, hey, I'm kind of like a father to the fatherless to these guys on the track team. So can you like excuse their absence if they miss a day, or like, hey, teacher, can you help them make up that test, give them extra credit? No, I don't need them to do anything. They just, they're having a rough time at home. But what he was really doing was using them for making the sex industry. This was before the internet was really popular. You have to imagine like dial up. So what would you upload had to take a long time, and it had to be meditated and all of this extra. What I noticed was some of my friends were really vulnerable to different things. And it was kind of like the Paris Hilton age. So the sex tapes were kind of like a cool thing to do. I started to see some of my friends becoming in trouble for things that I didn't really understand, but I didn't know who was doing it. So it takes me to the junior year. I've done this whole thing for God, don't see anything happening. Go to this party at the track coach's house where we were celebrating the end of the year states meet, so it wasn't like it was awkward or sketchy. And he tells the parents and faculty at the end of the day, it's a Friday night, you guys can all head home. I'll kick the kids out around 10, but let's just let them, celebrate a little bit longer. We weren't drinking. There was no drugs. It was very much the white tent and the pig roast and things like that. What I found out was he had done this many times.
Wow.
But I didn't know when I got there what was going to happen. I had no idea what he was capable of. And what he did was told the parents to leave around 8:30.
Mhm.
He'll kick us out at 10. We get introduced down into the basement, which wasn't weird in Michigan because we had finished basements.
Yeah.
He had, a foosball table and a video game console and a big screen TV. And he says, I don't want to be the one responsible, but I want you guys to watch this video. And he puts in the VCR, right, this VHS of a homemade child pornography tape. And it starred two of my friends.
Oh, wow.
And like clockwork, right, the movie ends and his main characters walk down into the basement and we're all in shock. So it's a party and he knows exactly what to do, right? He turns down the lights, turns up the music, opens the bar, and it doesn't matter if you're drinking or not because he's going to date, rape, drug you, every single one of us.
Oh, wow.
The leader of the school is sitting right there, not knowing what to do. No one prepares you for this type of scenario.
Mhm.
It's stranger danger. It's somebody you don't know,
Right.
but this is somebody we all know and love. He knows that and he uses that to his advantage. So now it's a party. He's opened up this bar. It doesn't matter if you're drinking or not. I wasn't a drinker then. Like I had no idea what alcohol really was. I wake up with my head hitting the back of a hot tub and two of my friends who are raping me. And he's standing above it with a camcorder recording it. And then my friends are next to him cheering him on. That's my next image. And I kind of freak out, jump out of the hot tub, try to put on my clothes real fast. I'm like falling all over the place and I get inside. And then the track coach and like the linebacker of my school push me up against the wall and say, you're too drunk to drive. You can't go anywhere. And I just was like, I don't drink, no, I'm not. Like, let me go, And the next memory I have is waking up under the coffee table with my phone and my keys like neatly packed on top of it. And I smelled like somebody else's shampoo. I freak out. I go to work because I've worked at the same place for the last 3 years, every single Saturday morning. And so I go to work and I go to my supervisor, who's just a girl 2 years older than me, who's graduated. And she, kind of sees my bewilderment. She's like, what's wrong? And I said, well, I think I had sex with two guys in one night last night. Like, what does that mean? And she says, well, you might as well get used to being called a slut because that's all you'll ever be known as. And she was right. We're from a small town. The label kicked in right away. I get home from work and I call my best friends. I said, you left me at that party last night. Like you live down the road. Why didn't you make sure I was okay? And they were like, well, you seem like you were having fun. And so I said, well, I think I was raped last night. And they were like, well, rape's a really strong word, Alicia. You don't want to go around accusing anybody, do you? These guys have full ride scholarships. So I didn't know what to do with that. And as a very new believer, I was more mad at God than you can ever believe, right? And I was like, if you're a God that's supposed to be good, why did this happen to me? And I was like, what did I do to deserve this? That's all the questions start coming for anybody, not just believers, but anybody who gets in that situation where you're being abused and taken advantage of. I internalized this thing, but it didn't matter. What was going to happen next lasts a lifetime. And he started sending friends and other people to come pick me up. On the outside, it looks like my mom's like, oh yeah, you're hanging out with the popular kids now. Like she's getting picked up in the nice cars and they're taking her on dates that,
Right.
That's awesome for her. Except for me, it was like going to house parties where the parents are drunk upstairs and the kids are raping each other in the basement. It gets really devastating. It lasts all summer. There's fear now. If I don't do it, they're going to tell my mom and my dad what's happening. And if I go do it, I have to live with this regret and shame and nasty feeling that you get. It happened all summer long. And by the time school rolls around for my senior year, the advisors of the different organizations that I was on started calling. Alicia, we heard about your reputation this summer. We're going to ask you to step down. Alicia, we heard about your reputation this summer. We're going to ask you to step down, over and over. And one of the advisors was one of my dad's good friends from high school. These people knew me. What happened to me is the question that nobody asked. And so I went most of my senior year living in the dark. I started doing all the things you don't want to do, right? I started taking drugs. I started drinking heavily. I started isolating myself, cutting myself, attempting suicide 3 times and couldn't die. So I couldn't even do that right? Like I was mad. I was angry and no one was seeing it and no one was asking me. I started skipping school, not because I was at some leadership conference thing. I was skipping school so that I could get high and get drunk. I started doing things that you wouldn't normally see a child who has all the potential in the world to be great do these things. I stopped showering. I was doing things to just escape. It was really unfortunate. My mom says, well, it seems like you're sexually active. We need to go get birth control. And I didn't want to. I was a holistic person. At that point in my life, I hadn't done anything drinking drugs or anything. I didn't want to put anything in my body. My mom was a smoker. So it was like, I'm never touching